Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Okay, our lecture today is on the biological assets, chapter 5 in your textbook. Okay, as the learning outcomes, so at the end of the chapter, you should be able to explain the terms of biological assets and distinguish between biological assets and bearer plants, and describe the basis of initial recognition of biological assets, the measurement, the disclosure, and some critical evaluation on the issues regarding the biological asset and bearer plants. So this is another types of assets that you have to distinguish between other types of assets. We have learned about the investment properties, the inventories, the PPE, the non-current asset held for sales, and so on. Okay, so for these types of assets, it is not common to all companies lah. Unlike other types of asset like PPE and property, plant and equipment, it is quite common for all companies. But for biological assets, normally it only applies to companies that have that produce or that raise like living animals and planting trees and so on. Okay, so this MFRS 141 applies, okay, to some of these kind of assets owned by companies. Okay, so by definition, the biological assets is defined and governed under MFRS 141, the agriculture. And the biological asset itself is a living animal or plant. And MFRS 141 applies to account for biological assets except for bearer plants. Okay, so the bearer plant itself is not covered under 141. Okay, the bearer plant is actually covered under MFRS 116, which is property, plant, and equipment. So even though it is a plant, okay, but it is a special plants, we call as a bearer plants. So it come under MFRS 116, which is property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so the MFRS 141 also applies to agricultural produce at the point of harvest. Okay, so we'll look at it. What is actually the agricultural produce? It is like the fruits on the trees. Okay, it is considered as agricultural produced. Okay, at the point of harvest, as long as it's still attached, okay, to the trees, okay, it will be considered as agricultural produce. And government grants that relates to agricultural activity. And MFRS 141 does not apply to land or intangible assets related to agricultural activities. So if we want to, the plantation area, the plantation land itself is not considered or is not covered under MFRS 141. Okay, the land should be considered or should be recognized under MFRS 116, which is property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so intangible asset. Okay, intangible asset has its own MFRS. Okay, even though it is related to agricultural business activities, but it's not covered under MFRS 141. So these are among the key terms that you need to understand, okay, when we are learning the biological asset chapter. The first one is the agricultural activity. What does it mean by agricultural activity? Okay, it is the management by an entity of the biological transformation and harvest of biological assets for sale or for conversion into agricultural produce or into additional biological assets. Okay, so it is actually a management of activities, by entity which involve biological assets. Okay, like farming, the farming itself, it can be vegetable farming or livestock farming. Okay, so it involves and activities. So this kind of activities can be classified under agricultural activity. Biological transformation includes, okay, this is to explain what is biological transformation. So the biological transformation includes the processes of growth, degeneration, production, and procreation that cause qualitative or quantitative changes in biological assets. So the process of um, raising the livestock, haiwan ternakan. Okay, so the biological transformation maknanya it involve the activities of the entity to grow trees. Okay, uh, starting from the seeds. Okay, planting the seeds until it grows to be a full-grown trees that can produce fruits or whatsoever. Okay, or it starts with the breeding the animals. Okay, breeding the livestock. Okay, and then nurture the livestock until it full grown. Okay, to be full grown livestock. For example, the cattle or the sheep. So that it can be sold to others. So there are actually transformation or biological transformation, in the asset itself. The agricultural produce is the harvested produce of the entity's biological assets. Okay, for example, if the biological asset we are talking about is the sheep, or the cattle. Okay, the cattle. Okay, so the dairy cattle. So the milk that we harvested from the cattle is agriculture produce. Okay, the trees, the fruit trees that we planted. Okay, so the fruit itself and the fruits of the trees. Okay, it's the agriculture produce. And the harvest is the detachment of produce from biological assets or the cessation of a biological assets life process. So when when we say it is being harvested, meaning we detach the produce from the biological asset. For example, like the fruits, okay, we detach and we pick the fruits from the trees. So it is called harvest. Okay? Or sometimes the biological asset itself. Okay, we slaughter the cattle. We are not only harvesting the milk, but sometimes we slaughter the cattle to get the meat. So the slaughtering process is refers to as the harvesting the biological asset itself. Okay, in MFRS 141, paragraph 6, it mentioned about the common features of agricultural activities. So to really understand or to really identify or recognize what is the agricultural activities, so we look at this kind of characteristic. The activities can be considered as agricultural activity when there is a capability to change. Okay, maknanya we have a living animals and plants that are capable of biological transformation. Okay, so it is animal, it is a plant, so they grow. So if there is a changes in there is a growing process, okay, in the assets, okay, so it should be considered as agricultural activity. Okay. Management of change. Okay, so the management facilitates biological transformation. In order for the animal or the plant to grow, okay, there is an intervention from the human, okay, from the management of the entity. Okay, so if there is an intervention from the management of the entities, okay, in order for the animals or the plant to transform biologically. Okay, so this is what we call as a management of change. Okay, so we facilitate the changes of biological transformation. Okay, so probably we feed them with healthy foods, and we spread the pesticides, okay, to protect them from the fungus or whatever. Okay, so these are all uh, the things that the management do in order for them to facilitate the growth. And such management, okay, distinguish agricultural activity from other activities. For example, harvesting from unmanaged sources. If we harvest, we catch the fish from the ocean, okay, it is ocean fishing, it is not considered as agricultural activity because the fish in the ocean is not managed by the entity. Okay, the fish feed themselves in the ocean. Okay, so we just go to the ocean and catch the fish. So it does not involve any facilitation from the management, okay, to help the fish to grow. Unless there is a fishing farm, okay, we create a nest, nets, okay, near uh, um, the ocean, okay, in the ocean, okay, but the nest is in the ocean, okay, but we feed them, we feed them, we feed the fish, okay, within the boundary of the nest. Okay, so in that case, okay, so it is considered as agricultural activity. So ada sangkar kan, kita ada buat sangkar in the middle of the ocean, okay, or at the edge of the ocean, I mean, near the beach, okay. So it is in the ocean, but it's managed by the entity, so it is considered as agricultural activity. But if the fish is at the open ocean, okay, we catch the fish in open ocean, so that is not considered as agricultural activity. Okay, measurement of change. This is another common features of agricultural activity. The change in quality and the genetic merit, for example, the ripeness of the fruits and the fiber strength, or the quantity and the weight, the fiber length, and number of buds brought about by biological transformation or harvest is measured and monitored as a routine management function. Okay, so in terms of the management of change tadi, sometimes there is a change in the quality. Okay, uh, as I said, probably we take care of the we feed them with a healthy foods. Okay, kita bajakan all the plants with good fertilizers and so on. So the quality of the harvest tu nanti, okay, will increase. Okay, so this is also what we call as agricultural activity under the management of change. Okay, for example, Denai Agro Farm Sendirian Berhad raises 2,000 cattle in its farm in Kuala Selangor. So this company has 2,000 cattle, and the company slaughters the cattle at its abattoirs and sells the carcass to the local market in Selangor. Daging dia dijual kat local market in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, and Perak. Okay, so this cattle was raised probably from the beginning lah, mungkin daripada kecil lagi, they raise the cattle until certain age, okay, they slaughter the cattle and sell, okay, the meats to the local market. So explain whether the above activities are within the scope of MFRS 141 agriculture. So Denai Agro Farms Sdn Bhd involved in agricultural activities because raising the cattle meets the criteria specified in paragraph 6 of MFRS 141. The criteria that we have I discussed earlier this one, the capability of change, the management of change. Okay, so because of that, maknanya the activities done by Danai Agro Farm Sdn Bhd is considered as agricultural activities, and it is covered under MFRS 141 agriculture. The cattle itself are biological asset, okay, while they are living. Okay. As long as they live, they live, selagi mana hidup, maka it can be considered as biological assets. However, when they are slaughtered, okay, biological transformation ceases. Okay, the transformation, of course, lah, bila dia dah being slaughtered, they die. So there is no biological transformation anymore. There is no growth anymore. So the carcass or the meats meet the definition of agricultural produce. Okay, jadi asalnya dia adalah biological assets. Okay, once being slaughtered, maka dia adalah agricultural produce. Okay. Ini case cattle lah. Okay. Tapi kalau you turn to page 148, okay, in your textbook, okay, look at 148, page 148, table 5.1. Okay, they have list out all the biological assets, the produce, and the products. For example, the first one is sheep. Okay, the sheep is a biological asset, and the agricultural produce is the wool. Dia punya bulu dia. And the products that we can make from the wool is the carpet lah. The trees, okay, biological asset, trees in a timber plantation. Okay, the agricultural produce is the fell trees. Okay, once we have cut down trees, maka the transformation, the biological transformation stops, ceases. So from there on, maknanya the trees itself, asalnya dia adalah biological assets, but when we have cut the trees, it becomes the agricultural produce. Yang wool dengan sheep tadi itu dia berbeza, two entity yang berbeza. The sheep is a biological asset, but the wool is the agricultural produce. But the sheep itself can be agricultural produce when the sheep is being slaughtered to be sold to customers. Jadi kalau the sheep itself pun kita akan slaughter and it becomes a agricultural produce. Dairy cattle is a biological asset. Okay, the milk is the produce. The pigs, the cotton plant, the cotton plant, apa namanya, pokok cotton apa? Hilang. So the cotton plant is the biological asset, and the harvested cotton is the produce. Sama lah pokok-pokok ni kita semua tahu. All the plants when they have the fruits itself, so it became the produce of the biological asset. Dia macam sugar cane, okay, the sugar cane itself, the cane itself is being harvested. Oil palm, oil palm, maknanya the palm fruit tu, itu adalah dia punya agricultural produce. The rubber trees, the latex that we have harvested from the rubber trees is a agricultural produce. Alright, so boleh nampak perbezaan antara biological assets and agricultural produce. So the agricultural produce, okay, as long as it attached to the biological asset, okay, it will be considered as biological asset. But once we have harvested, once the produce has been detached, maka it will not come under MFRS 141 anymore. Okay, so it will come under inventory. So we are using MFRS 102. Okay, for example, in this case, the Danai Agro should account for the live cattle Cattle yang hidup itu accordance to MFRS 141 because it is still alive and it is a biological asset. Okay, but once we have slaughtered the cattle, okay, maka it will not come under MFRS 141 anymore because it's no longer a biological asset, but it becomes an inventory, and the meats become an inventory. Therefore, we should use the MFRS 102. Okay, in terms of recognition, MFRS 141 specifies that biological assets or agricultural produce should be recognized when the following conditions are met. Okay, the entity controls the asset as a result of past event. So same thing goes for other assets. Kalau you tengok dia punya syarat dia sama je. Okay, if you want to consider the item is an asset, maka you have to be able to control the assets. So the asset should be because of a result of past event, and the asset should have the probable future economic benefits will flow to the entities, and the fair value or the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. Okay. Control in agricultural activity may be evidenced by legal ownership of the assets, the ability to sell or pledge the asset, as well as the exposure of risk and rewards of ownership of the asset, etc. Okay, same. Characteristic or condition. Okay, with other assets, with other fixed asset, PPE, investment property, and so on. We have to have a control over the assets. Example of control, legal ownership of cattle and the branding or marking of the cattle on acquisition, birth, or winning. And so these are all the examples of control. Maknanya, if the cattle is within our property, ataupun we brand or mark the cattle, kadang-kadang kita tandakan all the cattle kan kat telinga dia tu, so it is an evidence that this cattle belongs to us, so it's considered as a control lah. In terms of measurement, okay, the initial and subsequent measurement for biological assets, we are talking about biological assets, and agricultural produce are specified in MFRS 141 as follows. The biological assets is measured on initial recognition, and at the end, initial recognition lah, masa kita beli tu berapa harga dia. So initially we will record the biological asset at that price, and at the end of each reporting period, okay, the biological asset will be measured at fair value less cost to sell. Okay, so the biological asset should be measured at fair value less cost to sell when the fair value can be measured reliably. For agriculture produce harvested from an entity's biological asset, okay, at the point it being harvested, okay, on the day it being harvested from the trees, for example, or on the day the wool has been harvested, okay, from the sheep, for example, okay, on that particular date, okay, we should find the fair value of the assets, the fair value less cost to sell of the produce. So we measure, okay, the agricultural produce at that particular price lah, okay. Jadi the wool, harga wool tu, because we are not actually what we call that, we purchase the wool from our suppliers or whatsoever. Okay, it comes from our biological asset, which is the sheep. The wool comes from the sheep. Jadi kita nak nilaikan macam mana? So we have to measure, okay, the wool, okay, at its fair value less to cost to sell at the point of harvest. On the day we harvest the wool from the sheep, so kita tengok harga pada waktu tu, less cost to sell. Okay. And MFRS 141 defines the fair value as the amount for which the asset could be exchanged between knowledgeable willing party in arm's length transaction. Ini semua konsep yang sama dengan other assets. The fair value of the biological asset has to be based on its present location and condition. And it is advisable to group biological asset or agricultural produce according to their significant attributes such as by age, quality, for example like cattle, kita ada mungkin yang cattle yang mature, ada yang immature, yang anak lagi, sama juga our plant, okay? Ada yang dah berumur dah mature lah, okay? Dah 5 years above or below 5 years, so we categorize or we group the biological asset accordingly. The selection of attributes are corresponding to the attribute used in the market for basis of pricing. Okay. For example, all A grade cow is grouped together and a fair value is determined for that group. So kita groupkan by quality, for example, by age. Ulang lah. So in terms of fair value for biological asset, the fair value determination, ini antara kaedah yang kita boleh gunakan to find the fair value. If there is a active market, okay, so we have to look at the market price lah. Kalau ada active market, maknanya we have to look at the market price. Kalau hanya ada one market, maka we look at the market quoted price. If we have more than one market, maknanya kita can sell our product to multiple markets, okay, mana banyak permintaan, so local as well as overseas, maka kita kena choose the most relevant market quoted price lah. This is common sense lah. If there is no active market, katakanlah the agriculture produce kita ni have no active market. Probably the produce is very rare in our place or in our countries. Jadi mungkin market tu tak ada lagi. So what we should do, we have to find sama ada the most recent transaction price or the market price for similar assets or sector benchmark. Ataupun kalau tak ada benda tu semua, we have to find the present value of the expected net cash flows from the assets. Kita kena buat some prediction lah ataupun expected cash flow. Okay, expected cash flow. Okay, so that is when there is no active market available. Or, okay, ini kalau maknanya the fair value can be measured. If the fair value cannot be measured, so what we can do is we have to find the cost less any accumulated depreciation or any accumulated impairment loss. Jadi kalau fair value is not possible to be determined for that particular biological assets, maka kita gunakan harga cost, cost asal dia less all the accumulated depreciation and any accumulated impairment loss. Okay, so there are several ways lah to determine the fair value of the biological assets. Okay, first, let's see examples that in your textbook on page 154, example 5.3. This is about the calculation of fair value of biological assets. I'll share your. Okay, take a look at the page 154. Okay, example 5.3, calculation of fair value of biological assets. Cocoa Best Farm Berhad raises 8,000 dairy cattle in its farm in Melaka, and the market value of dairy cattle is calculated by reference to the liters of milk able to be produced and the lactation rate of the cattle. So this is how the industry calculate the fair value lah. Okay, by using the liters of milk that each cattle able to produce and the lactation rate of the cattle. Okay. So at the end of each year, Cocoa Best Farm Berhad sells 1,000 mature cattle and 5 young cattle at the agro market in Johor Bahru. Okay. So dia nak jual 1,500 cattle. Okay, ada yang mature, ada yang young cattle. And the transportation cost to bring the cattle to the market are 1,050 ringgit per truck. So this company needs 5 trucks to transport the cattle, the 1,500 cattle tadi, because the normal capacity per truck is approximately 300 cattle. Satu truck can accommodate for 300 cattle. Dia nak jual 1,500 cattle. So the latest market value of dairy cattle are given as follows. So mature cattle, ini calculation dia lah. Okay. Maknanya for mature cattle, each cattle lah, one cattle, harga dia adalah 1,125. The young cattle can be sold at 450 ringgit per young cattle. So what we need to do is calculate the fair value of cattle for Cocoa Best Farm Berhad. Okay. So the fair value of biological asset, so the cattle is a biological asset, okay, and the fair value of the cattle is calculated based on market value, the fair value lah, the fair value less cost to sell. The transportation is the cost to sell. Market value minus transportation cost. Ataupun this is fair value minus cost to sell. So the transportation cost per cattle, okay, is macam tadi dia kata satu truck harga dia ialah 1,050 ringgit. Each truck can accommodate 300 cattle. Jadinya per cattle is 3 ringgit and 50 cent. 300 cattle ni regardless lah, sama ada young cattle ke ataupun mature cattle ke, maknanya dia can only accommodate 300 sahaja. Maknanya mungkin dia ada ruang 300 spaces in the truck, okay, dedicated for 300. Jadi tak kisahlah kalau masuk yang kecil ke, still they occupy one space. Jadi for each cattle, the cost per cattle is 3 ringgit and 50 cent. Jadi the fair value for mature cattle is basically 1,125 is the fair value minus cost to sell, which is 3 ringgit and 50 cent per cattle, the cost to sell per cattle. Jadi the fair value for one cattle, for one mature cattle is 1,121 ringgit 50 cent. Okay, whereas the fair value for a young cattle is 450 minus 3 ringgit and 50 cent, so it is 446 ringgit 50 cent. The fair value for young cattle each. Jadi dia nak jual 1,000 cattle, mature cattle, and 500 young cattle, so the total fair value would be 1,344,750. Okay, so this is very straightforward lah. Okay, ini cara untuk kira fair value for this industry saja. Kita tak tahu. Jadi it is given, the calculation is given. Alright, so there is example 5.3 in terms of calculating the fair value. In terms of the journal entries, example 5.4, journal entries for a biological asset. On 1st January 2018, Nona Farm Heritage Berhad purchased 1,000 sheep at a cost of 500,000 ringgit. 1,000 sheep, 500,000 ringgit total value dia. The company's financial year end is 31st December. It is estimated that the fair value of sheep in the market on 31st December 2018 is 515,000. Jadi there is an increase in fair value, yeah, 15,000. The company estimates that that commission to dealers is about 3,000 ringgit if they decide to sell the sheep. This is cost to sell. This is cost to sell. Explain how the above transactions are presented in financial statement of Nona Farm as at 31st December 2018. So the journal entries to be recorded, okay, on 1st January is debit biological asset, okay, 500, and credit cash or payable 500,000. And the biological asset is measured at its fair value less cost to sell. Therefore, the carrying amount of biological assets disclosed in the financial position as at 31st December 2018 was 512,000, which is, this is fair value 515, fair value less cost to sell 3,000 tadi. Jadi 512,000. Okay, is the apa namanya? Fair value dia lah, the fair value at the end of 2018. So there is a gain, okay, arising on the initial recognition of 12,000 ringgit, the fair value gain. Okay, this will go to the income statement lah, 12,000 ringgit. And the biological asset has been increased by 12,000 ringgit. Okay. Okay, yang seterusnya pun sama lebih kurang. So dia ada transportation cost and so on. Okay, so that's how the measurement of biological assets. It is a biological assets. When we talk about agriculture produce, okay, should not be debited into biological asset. Okay, it should be debited into inventory account lah. Okay, it is an inventory. All right. We come back to the slides. So we have looked at the fair value measurement. Okay, disclosure, the last part. Okay, for disclosure, for biological asset, the aggregate gain or loss that arise during the current period on initial recognition of biological asset and agricultural produce. Okay, so this is what we need to disclose in our financial statement lah. Gain or loss during the current period. Because why gain or loss? Because the biological asset is using fair value model. We have to measure it using fair value model where the fair value minus cost to sell tadi kan. So there would be a increase or decrease in the initial value of the biological assets. A description of each group of biological assets. So if the biological assets are grouped into different or multiple groups, okay, so we have to explain why we need to group, okay, the biological asset into group A, group B, and so on. Adakah dia based on the age or based on the quality and so on. And the nature of activities involving each group of biological asset period. Non-financial measures or estimates of the physical quantities of each group biological asset at the end of period and the output of agriculture produce during the period. So this is also a need for us to disclose the physical quantities of the biological asset. Okay, for group A tadi, group A cows, how many of them, and the output of the agriculture produce during the period. It is about the agriculture produce lah, Maknanya from the biological asset, apa yang telah diproduce. What are the agricultural produce for the biological asset. Macam tadi kita tengok dalam table 5.1, right? So we have biological assets and we have the produce on the next to it. The methods and significant assumption used in determining the fair value of each group of biological assets and agricultural produce at the point of harvest. Okay, yang tadi itulah, makna adakah our fair value determination is based on active market ataupun based on no active market, or we cannot actually measure the fair value reliably. Maka kita gunakan cost less accumulated depreciation. So that also need to be disclosed in our financial reports. The fair value less cost to sell of agricultural produce at the point of harvest. Okay. The existence and carrying amount of the biological asset whose title is restricted, and the carrying amount of biological asset pledged as security for liabilities. Some of the biological asset, okay, just like other type of assets, it can be collateral. It is okay, so the biological asset, just like other types of asset, it can become a collateral for loan or whatsoever. Right? And the amount of commitments for the development of acquisition of biological assets. The financial risk management strategies related, the reconciliation of changes in carrying amount of biological asset between the beginning and the end of the current period. Okay, probably the fair value of at the beginning of the period berbeza dengan at the end of the period. Okay, because beza kan setahun kan, jadi mungkin ada changes. And for biological asset where its fair value cannot be measured, MFRS 141 requires the following to be disclosed: the description of the biological assets, the explanation of why fair value cannot be measured. Apa masalah ni? Okay, kenapa tak boleh kita measure? So benda tu semua justification must be disclosed, okay, dalam financial reports. The range of estimates within which fair value is highly likely to lie, if possible lah. If not, then we go for cost less the accumulated depreciation yang dalam diagram tu tadi. The depreciation method used, the useful life of the depreciation rate used, the gross carrying amount, and the accumulated depreciation. These are all the things that we do when there is no fair value ataupun fair value cannot be measured reliably. Jadi kita terpaksa gunakan cost minus accumulated depreciation kan. Jadi all the depreciation punya issues tu kita kena disclose. Okay, so that's all about it for biological assets. Cuma ada sikit lah dalam you punya textbook. Okay, saya tak sempat nak masukkan dalam slides ni. Okay, on page 158, bearers plan, the bearer plans. Jadi MFRS 141 dia tak includes or it does not cover bearer plan. So the bearer plan is defined under the agriculture. Bearer plan MFRS 116 as a living plant that is used in the production or supply of agriculture produce. And this bearer plant is expected to bear produce more than one period. Maknanya bukannya sekali aja dia boleh berbuah. Kalau we are talking about bearer plant is a plant itself lah. Yang kita cerita pasal plant lah. So pokok tu dia boleh berbuah banyak kali. The bearer plant. And has a remote likelihood of being sold as agricultural produce except for incidental scale sales. It is very unlikely for us to sell the trees. Okay, jadi mana contohlah macam durian lah, pokok durian. Okay, we have a durian punya farm. So banyaklah pokok kan. So maknanya there is very unlikely lah for us to sell the trees ataupun to harvest the tree as a timber. And we are actually need dia punya fruits, the durian fruits. So the durian tree is considered as bearer plant. Okay. And then the agriculture, the bearer plant, ada agriculture ni dikata bearer plant ni also identifies that the following plant are not bearer plant. Jadi kita kena actually differentiate yang mana satu bukan bearer plant. Macam tadi saya sebut pokok durian tu adalah bearer plant. But which are not bearer plant? Tengok balik page 158 at the bottom. Dia kata the following plant are not considered as bearer plant. Apa dia? Plant cultivated to be harvested as agricultural produce. Contoh trees grown for use as a lumber. Pokok balak lah contoh. Pokok balak is not considered as bearer plant because the tree itself will be harvested. The tree itself, okay, the plant itself will be harvested. Satu. So they are not bearer plant. Plants cultivated to produce agriculture produce when there is more than a remote likelihood that the entity will also harvest and sell the plant as agriculture produce other than an incidental scrap sales. For example, trees that are cultivated for both their fruits and their lumber. So contoh apa pokok yang the tree itself kita akan harvest, not only the fruits but the tree itself kita akan harvest. Jadi kalau in that case at the moment I cannot think of examples of the trees yang dia berbuah, okay, tapi not only the fruits that we want to harvest but the tree itself we are going to harvest dua-dua sekali. Jadi in that case, the plant is not considered as bearer plant. And the last one is the annual crops, okay, like maize, wheat, rice, and paddy. Jadi these are considered as annual crops, yang kita akan harvest. Yes, kita akan harvest the trees, but kita akan harvest the seeds, the crops, I mean the beras dia, maize, jagung dia, wheat adalah dia punya seeds itulah. Maknanya not only the seeds is being harvested but the whole plant, okay, kita akan cut off. Jadi maknanya dia bukan boleh berbuah banyak kali. Okay, dia bukan boleh berbuah banyak kali. Once you have harvested the fruits or the seeds, okay, the plant cannot bear the fruit anymore. Tak macam pokok durian tu, atau pokok mangga ke, pokok rambutan ke. Okay, once you harvest the fruits, okay, it will grow the fruits again. Tapi kalau crops ni, annual crops ni, padi ke semua ni, once you harvest, that's it. I mean the whole tree gone. Jadi kena tanam balik to get the weeds or the rice and so on. Okay. Jadi itu nak bezakan which is a bearer plant or which is not bearer plant. Okay, in figures 5.2 on page 159, as you can see, okay, dia ada tunjukkan kalau oil palm, the oil palm tree, okay, the oil palm tree is considered as bearer plant. Okay. So it will come under MFRS 116. Okay, 116. Okay, because the oil palm tree can produce palm fruits, okay, every year. So maknanya bukanlah sekali harvest pokok tu kena tebang, tak. So this is considered as bearer plant. So it will come under MFRS 116. Okay, the oil palm trees, okay, will be considered or will be recognized as PPE. Right? The palm fruits, the fresh fruit bunches, okay, once we harvested too, it is a produce growing on bearer plant. Maknanya the palm fruits itself, as long as it attach to the oil palm trees, okay, it will be covered under MFRS 141. Okay, but once it has been harvested, okay, once it has been harvested from the trees, okay, it become a finished goods, finished product. Okay, so it may be the cooking oil, the margarine or whatever lah, the cosmetic. So these are the process that the product that we produce from the harvested palm fruits. Jadi maknanya it is no longer the agricultural produce, but it now becomes the inventories. So that's why it will be covered under MFRS 102. Okay, so there is a better plan. So I hope you can understand this chapter. Maknanya you should be able to differentiate or determine what is the biological assets, okay, and what are covered under MFRS 141, what are not covered under MFRS 141. Okay, and in terms of this one is the recognition. In terms of the measurement, okay, so it will be measured, okay, at fair value for biological asset under MFRS 141. It should be measured at fair value less cost to sell. So there, and we have another issues regarding the bearer plants. Okay, so the bearer plant, okay, ada yang there are some plants are considered as bearer plant and some plants are not considered as bearer plant. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all for chapter 5 under biological assets. So thank you very much for watching my lecture. We hope to see you soon, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.